make sure that the dads on TV are the only ones fainting in the delivery room. My first tip or thing I think you should know is that mom is probably going to poop when she delivers your baby. This is quite surprising for a lot of people, but please don't be shocked because you're gonna know in advance that this might happen. You're gonna play it totally cool and not even act surprised at all. My name is Dr. Nicole. I am a physical therapist and actually a mama of two myself, and I even went to my husband and got a little bit of his take on delivery as well as other dads in my life. So here are the 10 things that we came up with that you need to know before you go into the delivery room so that you are totally prepared and cool as a cucumber. The first two things I think you should know are related to the way your baby is going to look. So number one, your baby is going to be covered in this white stuff. It's called Vernix, and the reason it's there is because it actually protects your baby during the delivery process. It's actually really good for their skin and helping them adapt to the outside world, not being in water 24/7 after they're born. And so it's really good thing, but it's really weird. It's like sticky white and it's all over your baby, and they will probably pat some of this off pretty shortly after the baby is born. Sometimes they leave it on for longer because of the health benefits, but just know when baby comes out, it's going to be covered in this white stuff and it's going to look kind of weird. The second thing that has to do with what your baby looks like is that it might have a cone-shaped head. So I know everyone thinks that those little hats that they give babies are to keep your baby warm after they're born, because yeah, it is pretty cold compared to 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit inside of mom's body. But the truth is that sometimes those hats cover up heads that are a little bit cone-shaped. So when babies are being born, they have to come through the pelvis and the birth canal, and that's a pretty narrow space, and depending on how long mom is pushing and how long it takes for baby to be born, sometimes their heads get a little misshapen, and they were actually made to be this way. That is why their skulls are not fully fused when they're born, so that it can move and make its way through the birth canal, as well as so that its brain can grow. But don't be surprised if your baby has a little bit of a weird shaped head when they're born. The third tip I have for you is that mom's version of the story is probably going to be different than your version of the birth story. So don't be surprised if you're telling family and friends how everything went and she is explaining things one way and you saw things totally different. So there's a couple reasons for this. And the biggest one is that when we as moms go through the transition phase, we're very internally focused. So we're focused on what is going on with our body. We are just so immersed and involved in the process that sometimes we have no idea what is going on around us. Even sometimes this time period, basically we are just a little bit foggy. Also, if there was an epidural or any pain relief drugs involved, that sometimes can make our memories not quite as clear. And just as a survival tip, as humans, we remember a lot of times the best things and we forget the negative things. And so don't be surprised if her version is a little bit different, and you probably don't want to correct her and call her out in front of everyone, or I don't know, things might end badly, but that's just my suggestion for you. Number 4, breastfeeding is really, really hard. So if mom is planning to breastfeed when baby is born, it's stressful. Everyone portrays this as something that is so beautiful and so natural, and while it is really natural, there are a ton of benefits for your baby if you decide to breastfeed. Unfortunately, it's just not as easy as it looks for a lot of us. Sometimes it's hard for baby to latch because of a tongue tie or because of the way baby's mouth is shaped. If the muscles of the mouth aren't fully developed, sometimes they have a hard time latching. And the other thing is mom just feels awkward because you have to hold your boob and hold your baby, and you're trying to prop pillows, and then if you have visitors and people are watching, it's a really hard process. So first of all, be as helpful as you can be during this process. I know for me and my husband, it was really helpful if he actually, first of all, helped baby stay awake, because this is another thing with newborns. They're so exhausted, they don't want to eat sometimes. So he would, try to keep baby awake for me. And then also I was holding a boob and the main weight of the baby, but he was actually helping with positioning of head or supporting the baby if I couldn't get the pillows just right, tucking things for me and doing all sorts of things to help me. So really be available if your significant other is comfortable with this, because it's really stinking tough to do, and for a lot of moms it's really important. So not being able to do it, you kind of feel like a failure. you're not, but you feel that way. And so if there's any way you can be helpful during this process, I promise she will be extremely grateful for your help. The other thing that was surprising to me, and I think surprising to a lot of moms, is that even if you only gain like the minimal required amount of weight, most of us are still gonna look pregnant when we leave the hospital. And sometimes you think like, oh, I had the baby and then I'll be back to normal pre-baby size. And that's just not true because your uterus is actually still pretty large in those first few days, weeks after having your baby. And then you have a lot of extra fluid that you are carrying around to hold baby in, to keep baby safe. And it takes a while for you to get rid of all those fluids. And then just your abdominal muscles have been really stretched out. And so even if you were the same weight on the scale, things aren't going to be as tight and kept together as much as they were before you had your baby. And it takes a while for your muscles and your tissues to kind of come back to where they were before. And a lot of times, a lot of hard work on mom's part. So probably don't want to make any comments about how she can't fit in the pants that she brought, or how you thought she would look skinnier, or anything like that, because our self-confidence as women is sometimes not all that great after we have a baby. It's hard to adjust to all the changes that our body has to do. Even though life is beautiful and it's a miracle and it's awesome, it's still sometimes a hard pill to swallow. So just be aware of that. Your wife probably, or significant other, your baby's mama, will not look the same probably leaving the hospital as she did 9 months before when she wasn't pregnant yet. The next thing that's helpful to moms is that sometimes we get so in the zone of caring for a baby and we're stressed and we're anxious and we're just thinking about a lot of different things and we forget to eat. Now, this was definitely not the case for me. I am such a stinking hungry person. Like, I was totally happy with the fact that I could eat a lot more because I was breastfeeding, and the extra calories are totally justifiable. But for some moms, I had a friend like this, I went to see her and she's like, oh yeah, all I had this morning to eat was strawberries. Like, she just completely forgot to eat. So it is your job as a support person and to remind mom to eat. And even better if you can bring her snacks when she's breastfeeding, if you can help make meals, because we really do, especially for breastfeeding, but for anyone healing, we need a good amount of good quality calories each day in order to heal. And so eating is really important. So please help mom remember to eat. The next thing I think you should know is that even though you're gonna be really excited for your wife or partner's 6-week follow-up appointment because you're thinking, oh, we can get back to intimacy, that doesn't always happen. So even though at 6 weeks things might be completely healed down there and they might get the go-ahead from their provider, there is sometimes a lot of pelvic pain, a lot of anxiety around sex, and mental, emotional reasons why moms aren't ready to have sex. So just wipe that number out of your head and be in communication with your partner and talking about what they're comfortable with, how they're feeling, and work on what is going to work together to get back to having sex. I actually have a whole webinar that I did about postpartum sex, so I'm going to put that above. I'll put a link in the description below. So if that is something that you or your partner has questions about, check that out, because I basically answered as many questions as I could possibly think about postpartum sex. I interviewed my husband, so we have his take in the video as well. So just check that out if you're looking for more information about postpartum sex. So, but either way, just remember that 6 weeks is just a guess, and it does not mean that you are for sure going to be ready to have intercourse by 6 weeks postpartum. The next thing has to do with your hair. So a lot of people don't realize this, but after you have your baby, you have a lot of fluctuation in hormones, and part of those hormone changes means that you're going to lose a lot of hair. My sister actually told me that she wrote "I love you" to her husband with her hair on the shower wall, which is quite shocking that you're losing that much hair. But really what happens is during your pregnancy, because of the way your hormones are, you don't shed a lot. Most women don't. I think they say on average you lose about 8 hairs per day, and when you're pregnant you just don't. You don't lose that much hair. And so then after you have your baby, that hair just starts falling out. So be prepared for this, because there's going to be hair probably everywhere in your house, and it's really not her fault at all. Did you know that moms can actually get touched out? So what I mean by this is that we are spending a ton of times with our baby, and if we have other kids, when we bring our babies home. The other siblings are envious or jealous of all that attention, and we are filled with oxytocin, so we want to love on and touch our babies. I know my 2-year-old just could not get enough snuggles with me after we had our new baby, and this might be the case for you too. But what this means is that mom's getting so much physical touch during the day that she doesn't necessarily need her partner for that physical touch. When you would normally engage in intimacy with your partner, you've gotten all those love touches from your other family members during the day. So if mom is not up for hugs and snuggles and sex, it probably has nothing to do with you. You should definitely ask her if it has to do with you, but it might just be she's getting so many touches during the day, she just wants some time and space by herself. And I know this definitely happens to a lot of moms, and partners kind of take it hard sometimes because you feel a little bit left out. You feel like, why doesn't she want me? Why isn't she attracted to me? And really all it has to do with is the fact that they've filled up their love cup during the day with touching their kids so much. Number 10, the very most important thing that I want you to know as a partner and support person for a mom is that postpartum depression is not always as obvious or as well detected as we wish it would be. So signs of postpartum depression are if mom is no longer wanting to care for the baby, no longer wanting to care for herself, she's feeling like she wants to sleep all the time, doesn't care about anything, is also postpartum rage is a thing, postpartum anxiety, so having irrational thoughts about like, oh my gosh, my baby's gonna die all the time, or just like blows up and gets so mad at everyone because the cat purred too loud or something. Like, these are signs that the hormone levels after baby's birth might not be where they should be. There is such a thing as baby blues where you're just like a little bit more sad, you cry a lot more easily. That's completely normal. But if you're having those first things that I talked about, like you just don't care about anything, sleeping all the time, these are things that family members usually need to pick up on, because as a mom, I'm just thinking about taking care of my baby, or if I'm in this zone of depression, I'm not like, oh, maybe I'm depressed, no, I just feel like everything's normal, especially if it's my first baby. I have no idea what it's supposed to be like to have, you know, in the postpartum phase. I have nothing to compare it to. And so it's your job as a support person to help moms like myself become aware of like, maybe everything isn't okay. Maybe we should just talk to your doctor about that. Be really gentle when you do that, because no one wants to hear that, hey, you're like a psycho right now. You need to get help. That's not what any of us want to hear. So be really gentle when you bring that up, and maybe put in a call to your doctor and just ask if it's normal. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it's worth asking. And also worth noting that sometimes dads can go through a type of postpartum depression. So if as the dad you are feeling like your emotions are just way off from what they normally are, don't be afraid to talk to maybe your partner's OBGYN about who you can talk to, or calling your own family physician, because there is a chance that you could be suffering from postpartum depression as well. So those are my tips for dad. I don't want to hear any stories about fainting. Okay, I kind of do want to hear those stories. So if you have one, put it in the comments if you've ever heard of someone fainting, or if you are like, oh my gosh, this was the most surprising thing ever when I was in the delivery room. Please comment below. I read every single comment that you guys leave me, and they either make me laugh, make me cry, or make me think, oh, that is a very interesting point of view. So put those in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you now feel more prepared about going into that labor and delivery room. I don't want any dads to feel scared out there. And subscribe to my channel if you like videos like this, because I every once in a while put out videos for dad, but definitely have tons of information for expecting moms and newly postpartum moms. So thanks for joining me today, and I will see you all next week.